Lesson 1, The Great Divorce. Dear students, this lesson will provide the background underpinning how we divorce sex in marriage and sex in love, and how we use this primal instinct against mankind. Cocaine-inspired Freud, who worked for us, introduced his psychosexual theories replete with repressed incestuous fantasies to encourage humankind to be sexually liberated, or rather perverted. Whilst Freud was a renowned atheist, his psychoanalytic theory derives from the Kabbalah. Freud propagated that humans are innately bisexual, and he fixated their attention on sex. The vulgar were led to believe that sexuality is not binary, but a spectrum, much like sexual identity, and we cleverly conflated sex and gender. It's always best to sponsor academics and scholars to promote our ideas because the profane consider them trustworthy. Freud propagated that humans were fundamentally driven by their sex drive, and he submitted that even babies were libidinally charged. A fellow researcher, his name slips my mind, endeavoured to prove children are sexual from birth using data he acquired from a pedophile who raped them, hundreds of them, and recorded their orgasms using a stopwatch. The scientific perpetrator masturbated some infants for days, which is laudable in the name of science. It's like the never-ending torture of God's precious animals in the name of science. Good and evil become interchangeable. It was easy to corrupt sex when we removed God from society, when we convinced the profane that God doesn't exist, and they were nothing more than bald, promiscuous apes. Our clever scientists at the Royal Society, who were the best sorcerers, conjured up theories to indoctrinate the plebs into believing the universe and everything in it came from nothing. It's hilarious that they fell for it, the fools. God says, only the fool says in his heart there is no God, and we have fooled them all. The scientists and the philosophers think they're so clever, but their wisdom comes from us. We impart their antichrist ideas to them. The so-called intellectuals are the most foolish of all. God uses the foolish things to confound the wise, with the exquisite irony being the so-called wise consider the Bible fallacious. I love how we always manage to turn things upside down and inside out. Our skills of inversion are second to none. We have convinced the vulgar to ignore their God-given senses and instead believe in all kinds of folly. For example, they believe the earth is spinning, yet it feels still. They believe the earth encircles the sun, yet they see the sun, moon and stars encircle them. They believe the earth is a ball when it appears flat. They don't believe the Great Flood destroyed the ancient world despite the evidence, not least the Grand Canyon and the thousands of seashells and mountaintops. It's truly hilarious how foolish they are. Stupid, stupid people. However, the lie of evolution and how we indoctrinate the plebs through education is a lesson for another day. Today we are discussing how we corrupted sex and highlighting how successful our mission has been. Sex is God's wedding gift to newlyweds. It's a gift that keeps on giving and it lasts a lifetime. God designed sex for marriage, the institution that he ordained, and I'm loath to admit that it's a beautiful design. The husband and wife take vows, promising to love and care for each other, whatever life throws at them, till death do them part. The couple become one flesh, and there is a blood covenant. The deal is sealed. There is a spiritual union which bonds the husband and wife. Their love grows like an oak tree, and they express their love together in the most intimate way that humans can be with one another. God designed sex for bonding. It binds the couple together like glue. Obviously, we don't want that. We must always endeavour to destroy marriages because they're so wonderfully painful. God is clear that whoever he joined together, let not man put asunder. Ergo, it is imperative that we separate them, unless, of course, they're in dysfunctional and toxic marriages. We like to stoke these marital fires as they are marvellous for causing a lifetime of misery. Death by 1,000 cuts. We always prefer slow torture, like skinning infants. Sex was divorced from marriage in the swinging 60s when the church retreated into the recesses of society and sex became not only cheap but free, all in the name of love no less. We convinced the vulgar that sex is an expression of love, thus if two people love each other, it was okay that they weren't married. Love was the essential ingredient. And it didn't matter what sex people are, love is love. Mankind made up the rules, not God. And we brainwashed them with ideas like try before you buy, share and share alike, pass a parcel. We then divorced love from sex, which meant we could sell it. Loveless sex can be capitalised on and marketed, and today the sex industry rakes in billions. We talked the vulgar into thinking sex was merely a physical act, a means to satisfy their carnal needs. The fools don't realise they're spiritually bonded with every person they conjugate with, and they open doorways to us through their sexual perversion and immorality. We hypersexualise society, not least through beloved Disney movies by Trusty Walt, which are packed with subliminal sexual imagery. Porn has worked wonders for perverting the masses and given us a foothold into their psyche. It became mainstream from the 80s and 90s with the advent of the internet, and praise Satan, it has ruined untold marriages and lives. The vulgar became infinitely more vulgar. Porn addicts require progressively harder footage to get aroused, and when they cross darker lines, we delight in telling them how foul they are. God has handed countless numbers over to their reprobate minds. This is the most precarious position for the fallen, and the beautiful aspect is our ignorance. We have trapped so many with porn. We made divorce laws easier from the 70s, and most people getting married today, as their wedding jitters quite rightly kick in, placate themselves that if the worst comes to the worst, they can get a divorce. It could not be easier. The profane don't believe in God, so they don't consider their divorce sin. Marriage can be rendered a mere piece of paper with the potential to be torn up or burned. It ultimately doesn't mean anything without God. That's not, of course, withstanding that we do make divorce incredibly annoying and stressful through legalities, particularly financial concerns. This brings out the worst in them. This adds insult to injury and fans the flames of hatred. Their once blossoming love turns into the worst kind of vitriol. We relish in their devastation, which we engineer. We get energized by their anger, misery, and sorrow. It's our spiritual food and nourishment, just as God's word feeds believers. But it truly is the most beautiful design, the way God made love and marriage. Two people fall in love, one of the most euphoric feelings in the world, and get married. The in-love feeling lasts up to 2 years, and by then couples know if they're marriage material. The love drug propels couples to get married. They're high on love, which emboldens them to take the plunge. No fear, they've got their positive shades on. The in-love feeling transforms into deep, everlasting and unconditional love, as Paul details in 1 Corinthians 13, which intensifies with the passing of time. The courtship is delightful. Before we corrupted it, people would get high by the brisk touch of a hand or an arm around the waist. The tantalizing butterflies were stirred. The air or atmosphere would feel thick, tangible, charged with passion. The strength of feelings that people have for each other, induced by the surge of brain chemicals, can, of course, be used against them. We can make them wildly jealous and erratic and insane. We can drive them crazy with passion and desire and fervour. But we'll get back to how we use love against them and against any semblance of self-control they might otherwise have. Married couples consummate their marriage, and kids are blessings from that beautiful union. It's God's call which couples he uses to create more image bearers, and we can never know his reasons because his ways are higher than ours. Children represent their parents' love, and I don't think there could be anything nicer than having a child with someone you really love and seeing your little creation together, or rather God's creation through you. These little hybrids have their mum or dad's eyes or smile or mouth or chin or ears or little toes. They can see their beloved in their offspring. God made humans to exist in families founded on love. Humans need to feel secure from birth and know they are wanted and loved. They were tribespeople, and children need a mother and a father because they bring different goods to the table. Women are more nurturing and men more pragmatic. They are the two pillars holding up the house. They complement each other and work as a team. The man loves the woman and would lay down his life for her, and the woman respects the man. The husband is the protector, and whilst the wife's counsel is valued, the husband, father, is the head of the home and makes the final decision. Jesus is the head of the husband is the head of the wife, and the wife is the head of the children. However, when we removed Jesus from the house and men became crap, chaos and disorder landed, which was a score for us. Families were no longer ruled according to God's will, but rather man made up the rules. Being the inherently stronger and more powerful person of the duo, men were empowered at women's expense. They made the money and women were at their mercy. Money is such a wonderful catalyst for creating discord. Money is power. People need money like they need air. And humans love power because we talk them into how good it feels. Power is a powerful drug, an aphrodisiac, much like being in love. People get drunk on it. So we capitalised on the gender power imbalance and eroded the fabric of marriage patch by patch. With no God to answer to, men could beat up their wives if dinner wasn't ready at 5 p.m, or ping cigarette butts at her head for funsies. We got under their skin through open doorways and demonized them to become psychos like us. We got them addicted to cigarettes and alcohol and talked them into spending their wages on these vices rather than giving it to the wife to use for their home. Drink and drugs ruins everything, which is always a winner. We shall, however, address the beautiful potency of substances in another lesson. Instead of valuing their wives, they disrespected them. We put ideas into their minds like their wives are annoying and lazy and spend too much money, and we cause them to doubt her fidelity. Like, what is she up to with the window cleaner and the roofer when you're out working hard all day? We equally enticed husbands to betray their wives and have affairs. We must always capitalise on lust because of its incredible power to entrap. Lust is one of our finest salacious methods to precipitate the downfall of marriages. Without God, humans invariably put themselves first. We must always convince the vulgar that their own needs and happiness are paramount. It's all about them. At the same time, we enlisted our agents at the CIA to launch feminism. This was our ploy to destroy families and get women into the workplace to pay their taxes. Women would need propaganda to convince them that working 9 to 5 and slaving their asses off like men was a good idea. This came in the guise of freedom and equality. Women had every right to work as hard as a man, and she quite rightly deserves the same pay. Banking families like the Rockefellers funded women's liberation. Gloria Steinem, the face of feminism in the 60s, was a CIA agent, and the CIA funded her Ms. magazine, which was instrumental to changing mindsets. In addition to the financial score, our aim is always to destroy families because it so profoundly wrecks everyone involved, both emotionally and financially. It's such a delight. We can then tempt these broken individuals with substances and other vices. We can lead them down darker paths. God hates divorce, but we can capitalise on it, and it has a tendency to perpetuate as those from broken homes tend to repeat the cycle. Dysfunctional people implicitly seek out other dysfunctional people, and together they create more dysfunction. Dysfunction breeds. It's wonderful. Dysfunction breeds dysfunction. Single mums forced to work full time have less time for their children, which compounds at already high levels of stress. These women are the unsung heroes. They do their best to steer the ship without the captain, but it's difficult to navigate those stormy seas, and there's no one to comfort them as they contend with the invariably challenging children who need their father. As it transpires, the best thing we ever did was remove fathers from the family home. This set the instability in motion. We got the fathers out the way, and then we forced the mothers out the way. Ideally, we want mothers back to work before the child is 1 year old. To support this endeavour, we also made life more expensive, so that even if parents are together, they both need to work full time to afford the kind of lifestyle we've brainwashed them to want. It's imperative for them to be plagued by what others have and get themselves into debt. They must always keep up with their peers. We talk them into buying things they don't need and can't afford, which in turn stresses them out. They're so distracted by shiny new objects that they fail to see what is important, namely their God-given family and their God-given time. Fundamentally, feminism was about control. The government structure had to replace the family structure to enable us to indoctrinate the vulgar in the workplace and in our schools with our antichrist ideologies. Respectively, we have fed them socialism, the forerunner to communism, and intersectionality, and now those who could not be more asleep to the truth pride themselves on being woke. It's hysterical, side-splitting. Identity politics has been so wonderfully divisive, as people have never been so obsessed with their identities. It's marvellous that these lost souls don't know who they are. They're unaware that they bear the image of God. Thus, the bankers pushed propaganda about patriarchy and unequal rights, which they couldn't care less for, as their means to ignite the fight of feminism. Whilst there were, of course, legitimate reasons for feminism, because men were notoriously exploitative, ultimately it was a ploy. Men and women were no longer complementarians, but rather competitors. Women were encouraged to climb the corporate ladder. We tapped into their pride and told them they could perform as well as a man, or even better. Women could run the world, and those silly frauleins fell for it. The slavery of family life was replaced by corporate slavery. We got women career orientated instead of family focused, as the last thing we want is more image bearers of God. Hence abortion, homosexuality and transgenderism have proved so fruitful. We told women they could do it all, but why would they want to? It's like women could fix their own roofs and cars and toilets, but why would they want to do it if they could get a man to do it? And the joke is, men invariably want to because it pleases them to please a woman. It's the way God made them. Just as God designed women to be homemakers, men like to feel useful and women like to make homes homely, like it's instinctive for beavers to build dams. Women are increasingly realising that working full-time is overrated and stay-at-home mums had it sweet. It's hilarious. They're forced to suck up the drudge like their male counterparts and maintain a home. Men lost their place in the world, which has in turn caused anguish. They are no longer necessary, women don't need them, and they serve no purpose. They are superfluous. They lost their power and their respect. Respect is important for men, just as women need to feel loved. Respectively, we tapped into these instincts by making them angry and aggressive and hurt when their needs aren't met. Men are increasingly disrespected and women are increasingly unloved. It's spectacular, as no one wins. Feminism capitalised on broken homes as it reinforced how crap men were. Women were doing it all and were reconstituted as the head of the family. We blurred the traditional gender roles to encourage androgyny, which was supported by endless propaganda depicting men as weak and stupid and women as strong and clever. We have pitted men and women against each other and capitalised on the hatred that seethes out their pores. Men are so wonderfully lost these days, particularly young single men. Thus women have triumphed. But boss babes are equally unhappy. It's marvellous. The current paradigm isn't making anyone happier, and casual sex was intrinsic to it all. Feminism introduced casual sex and birth control, so sex was no longer sacred and safe within the confines of marriage, but rather it was a free-for-all. Indeed, young people in the 21st century pride themselves on copulating with hundreds and even thousands of people. Their little minds are so debased, they think a high body count is smart. Sex is cheap and disposable, like people. Its meaninglessness stands in stark opposition to how God made it. People behave worse than animals, and their depravity gives us an opening to toy with our emotions and mess with our minds. We have brainwashed the vulgar to think they're liberated, but they're not. They're trapped by the brokenness of their sexual immorality, which they take into each new relationship. They're spiritually bound together in a web of sticky glue with myriad others, and many remain in festering toxic relationships because they're spiritually bonded or glued to that person. They have no self-respect and love their abusers like Stockholm Syndrome. Post-feminism encouraged women to empower themselves through their sexuality, which further sexualized them, which is what men want. It's so wonderfully easy to entice men because they're such visual creatures. However, most men equally don't want the village bike where everyone's had a ride, as they don't respect her. Indeed, no one respects anyone anymore because there's invariably not much to respect. People are lost and broken and blind to the only one who can fix them, the only one who loves them unconditionally and who laid down his life for them. Respectively, we must always strive to obfuscate God. The vulgar can never know why Jesus came to earth and what purpose he serves. This is the most important lesson of all. In summary, we have done an excellent job at corrupting and perverting the vulgar. Indeed, the 21st century reminds me of Sodom and Gomorrah. It is a quintessential picture of debauchery, from the red light district in Amsterdam to the menus paedophiles use in Thailand to order what children they want. Our master is well pleased, and he's most excited about the future degeneration. It's all downhill from here. We have also done an outstanding job at destroying the family home. Freud would be in his element with the old mommy and daddy issues. People's hearts are growing cold, which is a clear indication that we are in the end days and our dark lord will soon be taking his throne.